What happens when the world judges you by the uniform you wear instead of the heart you carry? When cruelty becomes entertainment, and kindness is mistaken for weakness. In a sprawling estate on the hills of Johannesburg, a man in a driver's cap endured mockery every single day. The mansion gleamed. The guests laughed. And no one, not one soul, thought to ask why he smiled through it all. This isn't just a story about wealth hidden behind humility. It's a story about the masks we wear, the assumptions we make, and the moment when truth shatters everything we thought we knew. His name was Samuel. And before the world learned who he really was, he was just the driver. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every truth demands to be heard. Now, before we begin, where in the world are you watching from? Is it morning in Lagos, evening in Nairobi, or midnight in London? Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now, lean in. Because what you're about to witness will change the way you see everyone around you. Samuel adjusted his cap in the rearview mirror and exhaled slowly. The black Mercedes gleamed under the morning sun, parked perfectly in front of the mansion's grand entrance. Behind him, the estate stretched like a kingdom, manicured lawns, marble fountains, and windows that caught the light like diamonds. It was beautiful. It was his. But no one knew that. He had been playing this role for 6 months now. Every morning, he put on the crisp driver's uniform, polished the cars, and opened doors for people who looked right through him. His own family lived in the mansion, his wife Grace, his 2 teenage children, and his elderly mother. They knew the truth. Everyone else. They believed what they saw, a humble driver working for a wealthy, invisible owner who was supposedly traveling abroad. It was a test Samuel had designed himself. A quiet experiment born from years of watching people reveal their true nature when they thought no one important was watching. The iron gates creaked open, and a silver SUV rolled in. Samuel recognized it immediately, Mrs. Adelik, Grace's cousin, and her husband, Mr. Adelik. They visited often, always with an entourage of friends eager to see the mysterious mansion and enjoy its luxuries. Samuel straightened his shoulders and walked toward the vehicle, his face a mask of calm professionalism. Mrs. Adelik stepped out first, her designer heels clicking against the cobblestone. She didn't look at him. She never did. "Is the madam inside?" she asked, her voice sharp, already moving past him toward the entrance. "Yes, ma'am," Samuel replied quietly. "She's expecting you." Mr. Adelik emerged next, phone pressed to his ear, laughing loudly at something. He tossed his car keys in Samuel's direction without a glance. Samuel caught them smoothly, his expression unchanged. Behind them came 2 younger women, friends of the family, their eyes wide with admiration as they took in the estate. One of them whispered something, and they both giggled, looking back at Samuel with barely concealed amusement. "Imagine walking here and not even being able to afford a room inside," one of them said, not bothering to lower her voice. Samuel said nothing. He had learned that silence was its own kind of power. He pocketed the keys and moved to park the SUV in the garage. As he walked, he heard their laughter echoing across the driveway, and something old and familiar stirred in his chest, not anger, but sadness. Sadness for them. For what they couldn't see. Inside the mansion, Grace stood in the foyer, greeting her guests with the warmth she was known for. She was elegant, poised, every inch the lady of the house. But when her eyes met Samuel's through the tall windows, there was a flicker of something deeper, concern, love, and a question she asked him every day without words: how much longer? He gave her the smallest nod. Soon. The afternoon unfolded like all the others. The guests lounged by the pool, sipped imported wine, and took endless photos against the backdrop of the mansion. Samuel moved through the periphery, serving drinks, carrying bags, opening umbrellas. He was furniture to them. Invisible. And he listened. Oh, how he listened. I heard the owner is some rich businessman in Dubai, Mrs. Adelik said, her voice carrying across the patio. Grace is so lucky he lets her manage the place. I mean, look at this life. She's always been lucky, another woman replied, a hint of envy in her tone. Some people just have it easy. Samoa set down a tray of fresh fruit and stepped back. Grace caught his eye again, and this time, her expression was harder to read. She was tired. Tired of the pretense, tired of watching her husband be treated like he was nothing. But she trusted him. She always had. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Samoa stood alone by the garden gate. He looked back at the mansion, at the life he had built with his own hands, the wealth he had earned through years of relentless work and wise investments. He thought about the people inside, laughing and judging, never once wondering about the truth. His mother's words echoed in his mind, words she had spoken to him just that morning. Son, a test that goes on too long stops being a test and becomes cruelty, even to yourself. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time. But not yet. Not until the moment was perfect. Not until the lesson could truly land. Because Samoa wasn't just testing others. He was testing himself, his patience, his humility, his ability to remain kind in the face of disrespect. And so far, he hadn't broken. But the storm was coming. He could feel it. It started with a birthday party. Grace's cousin, Mrs. Adelik, had decided to host her husband's 50th birthday celebration at the mansion. After all, she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the owner won't mind, and Grace practically runs this place anyway. Samoa had agreed, as he always did. The preparations took weeks. Decorators transformed the gardens into an elegant wonderland of lights and flowers. Caterers brought in cuisine from across the continent. A live band set up on the lawn. And through it all, Samoa played his part, directing traffic, hauling equipment, ensuring every detail was perfect. The night of the party arrived with over 200 guests. The mansion glowed like a jewel against the dark sky, music pulsing through the air, laughter rising in waves. Samoa worked tirelessly, dressed in his driver's uniform, moving through crowds of people who looked past him as if he were a shadow. At the entrance, he helped an elderly woman out of her car. She thanked him kindly, pressing a small tip into his palm. He smiled genuinely at her, the first real smile he'd worn all evening. Kindness, he had learned, was rare and precious, and it came from the most unexpected places. But inside, the atmosphere was different. Mr. Adelik stood at the center of a circle of admirers, holding court like a king. He was a successful businessman, and he made sure everyone knew it. His booming voice carried across the patio as he told stories of his latest deals, his luxury cars, his properties. This mansion, though, he said, gesturing grandly at the estate, this is what real wealth looks like. I told Grace she should introduce us to the owner someday. A man with taste like this. We could do business together. Samuel, standing near the bar, refilling ice buckets, felt something shift inside him. Not anger. Not yet. But a recognition. The mask Mr. Adelik wore was so thick, so practiced, that he'd probably forgotten his own face underneath. As the evening progressed, the alcohol flowed freely, and inhibitions lowered. A group of younger men, friends of Mr. Adelik's son, gathered near the pool. They were loud, entitled, their laughter sharp-edged. One of them called out to Samuel. "Driver, bring us more champagne. The good stuff, not whatever cheap thing you're serving." Samuel nodded and turned to go. But as he walked away, he heard one of them say, "Must be nice, right? Living in a world like this but never really being part of it. Like a dog that gets to sleep in the mansion but will always be a dog." The others erupted in laughter. Samuel's hand tightened around the ice bucket, but his face remained calm. He had heard worse. He had endured worse. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, his son David was watching from the upstairs window, his young face pressed against the glass, and Samuel saw the confusion and hurt in his eyes. That was the moment. That was when Samuel knew the test had to end. He set down the ice bucket and walked toward the group by the pool. They didn't notice him at first, still caught up in their jokes. When he stood before them, close enough that they couldn't ignore him, one of them finally looked up, annoyed. "What? Did you forget how to take orders?" Samuel smiled, a real smile, calm and knowing. "No," he said quietly. "I just wanted to thank you." The young man blinked, confused. "Thank us? For what?" "For reminding me why I started this," Samuel replied. "For showing me exactly what I needed to see." Before anyone could respond, Grace appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her presence commanding immediate attention. The music faded. Conversations died. She descended slowly, deliberately, her expression unreadable. Beside her walked Samuel's mother, dignified and strong, and his two children, David and Amora. Mrs. Adelic rushed forward, confused. "Grace, what's going on? Is something wrong?" Grace didn't answer her. Instead, she walked directly to Samuel, took his hand, and faced the crowd. The entire party had gone silent now, 200 pairs of eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before them. "I want to tell you all a story," Grace began, her voice steady and clear. "6 months ago, my husband and I made a decision. We had just completed building this mansion, a dream we'd worked toward for 15 years. We'd built our wealth through hard work, wise investments, and countless sacrifices. But we'd also seen something troubling. We'd seen how people changed around money. How kindness disappeared when they thought you were beneath them. How judgment came so easily when someone wore a uniform." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Adelic's smile had frozen on his face. "So my husband proposed an experiment," Grace continued. "He would step back. Pretend to be just the driver. And we would watch. We would see who people really were when they thought no one important was looking." A murmur rippled through the guests. Heads turned. Eyes widened. And slowly, inevitably, the pieces began to fall into place. Mrs. Adelic's face had gone pale. "Grace, what are you saying?" Samuel stepped forward now, removing his cap. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that he'd kept hidden for months. "I'm saying that I'm not the driver. I'm the owner. This is my home. My family. My life. And for 6 months, I've watched you all walk through it, judge it, use it, and judge me, without ever once seeing the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Adelic opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The young men by the pool had gone statue still, their earlier confidence evaporated. Throughout the crowd, faces registered shock, embarrassment, and dawning horror as people replayed every interaction, every careless word, every dismissive glance. Samuel's mother stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "My son didn't do this to humiliate anyone. He did it to learn. And to teach. Because the truth is, every single person here has been tested, and most of you failed." The elderly woman Samuel had helped at the entrance suddenly spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. I think I passed." She looked at Samuel with tears in her eyes. "You were so kind when you helped me. And I tried to be kind back." Was that the test?" Samuel walked over to her and took her hand gently. "Yes, ma'am. And you have a beautiful heart. Thank you for seeing me." The woman wept. And in that moment, several others in the crowd began to understand the magnitude of what had just been revealed, not just about Samuel, but about themselves. The party didn't end immediately. Instead, it transformed. The music had stopped, the laughter gone, replaced by a heavy, contemplative silence. People stood in small clusters, some with their heads bowed, others whispering urgently. Mr. and Mrs. Adelic remained frozen near the entrance, their faces portraits of shame and disbelief. Samoa didn't speak right away. He simply stood there, his family beside him, and let the weight of truth settle over the gathering. His son David had come down from his room, and Samoa pulled him close, one arm around his shoulders. This, too, was part of the lesson, showing his children that dignity wasn't something others gave you. It was something you carried within yourself, regardless of what uniform you wore. Finally, Mr. Adelic found his voice. It came out hoarse, broken. Samuel. We didn't know. We thought. You thought I was less than you, Samuel said quietly, without malice. Because of what I wore. Because of what I appeared to be. And that's exactly the point. You never asked. You never wondered. You just assumed. Mrs. Adelic stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Grace, I'm so sorry. I said such terrible things. I don't know what to say. Grace's expression softened slightly. You say what you've learned. That's all any of us can do. One by one, guests began to approach. Some apologized. Some simply looked at Samuel with new eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. The young man who had made the cruel joke by the pool stood at a distance, his face stricken, unable to meet Samuel's gaze. Samuel walked over to him. What's your name? Samuel asked. Turned, the young man stammered. Turned, look at me. Samuel waited until the young man raised his eyes. I forgive you. But I want you to remember this feeling. This shame. Not to punish you, but because it's the moment you have a choice. You can let this make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. Which will you choose? Ton's voice cracked. Better. I swear it. I'll be better. Samuel nodded and placed a hand on his shoulder. Then you've already passed the real test. As the night wore on, the gathering shifted from celebration to something deeper, a kind of collective reckoning. Samuel invited everyone to stay, to sit, to talk. He shared his story, how he'd grown up in poverty, worked his way through university, built his business from nothing. He spoke about the countless times he'd been judged, dismissed, overlooked. And he spoke about why he'd chosen to do this experiment. I didn't do this to catch you, he said, his voice carrying across the garden. I did this to show you something about yourselves. Something about all of us. We live in a world that teaches us to judge people by their position, their possessions, their power. But those things, they are just costumes. The real measure of a person is how they treat someone when there's nothing to gain. How they speak to someone they believe has no power. That's where character lives. His mother added softly, the heart reveals itself in small moments. A kind word to a driver. Patience with a waiter. Respect for a cleaner. These aren't small things. These are everything. The elderly woman who had been kind to Samuel spoke again. I lost my husband 2 years ago. He was a janitor at a hospital for 40 years. And I watched people treat him like he was invisible his entire life. But he was the kindest, wisest man I ever knew. Her voice broke. This tonight, it matters. What you did matters. As dawn approached, the last guest departed. The Adelics left early, too ashamed to stay, but not before Mrs. Adelic hugged Grace tightly and whispered, I'll do better. I promise. Mr. Adelic shook Samuel's hand, his grip firm but his eyes red-rimmed. I was wrong about you. About everything. Thank you for not giving up on us. When the gates finally closed and the house was quiet again, Samuel's family gathered in the living room. Amora, his daughter, looked up at him with curious eyes. Daddy, Did people really not know? They didn't want to know, sweetheart, Samoa said gently. Sometimes people only see what's convenient for them to see. David asked a harder question. Was it worth it? 6 months of them treating you like that? Samoa pulled both his children close. Yes. Because now you understand something precious. You understand that your worth isn't determined by what others think of you. It's determined by who you are when no one is watching. And more than that, you understand that every person you meet, regardless of what they wear or where they walk, carries an entire universe inside them. Treat them accordingly. Grace sat beside her husband, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm proud of you, she whispered. But I'm also glad it's over. Me too, Samoa admitted. Me too. In the weeks that followed, word of what had happened spread through Johannesburg social circles like wildfire. Some people were outraged, how dare Samoa deceive them. But most, upon reflection, understood. And changed. Turned, the young man from the party, showed up at the mansion a month later with a job application. I want to work for you, he said. Not because you're wealthy. But because you're the kind of man I want to become. Samoa eyed him. Not as a favor, but because he saw genuine transformation in the young man's eyes. The elderly woman, whose name was Mrs. Okonkwo, became a regular visitor. She and Samoa's mother formed a deep friendship, two women who understood the value of kindness in a harsh world. And Mrs. Adelik. She started a foundation to support service workers, drivers, cleaners, security guards, providing scholarships for their children. It was her way of making amends. Samoa never regretted the 6 months he spent wearing that uniform. It had taught him patience, humility, and the depth of human nature. But more importantly, it had taught his children, and an entire community, that respect isn't earned by position. It's owed by virtue of shared humanity. One evening, as Samoa stood on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, David came to stand beside him. Dad, his son said quietly. I understand now. Why you did it. Tell me, Samoa said. You wanted us to see that the person serving you coffee tomorrow might be the owner of the company. Or they might not be. But it doesn't matter. Because they're a person either way. And that's enough. Samoa pulled his son close, his heart full. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The mansion still stood on the hill, as beautiful as ever. But now, everyone who walked through its gates understood something fundamental. True worth isn't measured in marble and gold. It's measured in character, in kindness, in the courage to be humble even when you don't have to be. And Samoa. He hung up his driver's cap in a frame in his office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that the uniform you wear never defines you. Your choices do. Your character does. Your heart does. Samoa never regretted those 6 months. Years later, his children would tell the story to their own kids, the time their father became invisible to teach the world to see. The lesson remained, kindness isn't about who's watching. It's about who you are when no one important seems to be. Character isn't built in moments of comfort. It's revealed in how we treat those we believe can do nothing for us. And a heart that chooses humility over pride, kindness over judgment, and truth over appearances, will always build something beautiful. If this story moved you, hit like, share it, and tell me in the comments, have you ever judged someone too quickly, only to discover you were completely wrong? Subscribe to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every choice carries a lesson. This is Stories by the King, where truth finds its voice, and dignity never goes out of style.